Now, here's Paul Metsa.
And I wish I could see stars over the prairie, stars over the prairie tonight. And I wish I could see.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Stars Over the Prairie. This is your host, Paul Metsa. I just buzzed in from Hibbing, Minnesota, where a young man by the name of Bob Dylan, then Bob Zimmerman, graduated from high school in 1959. I was at an invite-only performance of the new movie, A Complete Unknown, about Dylan's time from the time he hitchhiked and entered the George Washington Bridge in New York City till 1965, when he blew things apart when he went electric at the Newport Folk Festival. It was a really wonderful movie. We're going to talk about a little bit more about it in the second set, but I really enjoyed it. And I think you could see the movie without even knowing who Bob Dylan was. You take your kids to it out there, folks, because it's a little love story and a lot of great music, and couldn't have had more fun than a frog and a glass of milk. So we got my wingman Chris Allen. Chris, how's your holidays going? You got all your Chris bought?
I do not have all of my stuff bought. I'm one of those last minute
gift card guys.
Yeah, no, I just
everybody's getting gift cards from Quick Trip this year.
Some people like to call it choosy. A lot of people call it procrastination. I'm that kind of person. I'm a last minute buyer kind of thing. Because I find buying presents so hard, and I hate wrapping them. If we could just get the person who invented that bag that you throw the tissue paper in, my hero. Because I love that. I love you can just shove it in there, put some tissue paper, write their name on it, put it under the tree.
Well, if you're shopping at little higher-end stores, sometimes they do that for you.
Yeah.
They don't do it at Goodwill or,
a lot of times they charge, though. Some of the places will charge. It goes to a good place. I know the Salvation Army has it and some other good charities. They charge to wrap your presents, and so I'd just rather just buy one of those bags, and there we go. We're done.
Well, good. Did you get something nice for your lady?
I did.
Good.
Yeah.
But let's not say what in case she listens.
I know. I'm not going to say it because I know she's sleeping, but you never know if one of her friends are listening. You go, I know what you're getting for Christmas.
Say, what do we do on Stars Over the Prairie? We talk to stars. We talk to people that used to be stars, people that are going to be stars, people that don't give a damn about any of that, just like to go outside with a cold one and look at the stars at night. We've got a really great show today. We've got a combination trio here from the band Willa Green and Era, the full band of Era. It's a duo. How many people are in that duo? That's two. So we're going to listen to some live Christmas music. They got a big show tomorrow. Celtic music for winter season, Sunday, December 22, 2024, at 2 p.m. at the Sacred Heart Music Center, which is one of the finest music venues in the Twin Ports. When I left Hibbing this morning, it was -10. It is now up to 11 degrees, so a 20-degree switch. It feels like it's tropical. Here broadcasting from KDAL, 610 AM, 103.9 FM. We are 237 somersaults down the hill from Bob Dylan's Duluth home. Don't ask me how I know that. I can tell you at a bar over martinis, but if there's kids listening, I don't want to know how those somersaults started. But we're only stone's throw away from Bob Dylan's way. So we're going to hear music from Willa Green. And then one of our first guests when we started last February or March, we had the great Charlie Parr on. And Charlie's been ripping it up with his new record, Little Sun. He's been traveling all over the country. He's traveling in Europe. So we're going to play a golden oldie, an interview with Charlie Parr. We're going to play half of it. We've got another half left for a future show. Although I will tell you, next week we're going to play a golden oldie with our other great friend Al Sparhawk here on Stars Over the Prairie. But we've got a really special guest for the second hour. You know, Chris, people can get a hold of Timothy Chalamet, Ellie Fanning, any of these stars that were in the Hollywood production of A Complete Unknown. But on Metsa, he digs a little deeper, and I got a hold of a lovely, intelligent, sweet woman named Terry Thal, who I spoke to a couple days ago from New York City. Who is Terry Thal, you ask? Well, not only was she married to Dave Van Ronk, the mayor of McDougal Street, she wrote a great book called My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me. She was the first manager of a young Bob Dylan when Bobby was only 21 years old. So
Wow.
A great interview with Terry in the second hour of Stars Over the Prairie. A couple of quick notes for the 2 or 3 of you out there that follow Paul Metsa's music career. I'm going to be over at River City Records at 1814 West Superior Street at about 1:30 or so to do an in-store appearance while people are over there shopping for great used records, books, and magazines. I'll have some of my records and books for sale. And, of course, don't forget Sunday, every Sunday from 4 to 6. We've got Paul Metsa and the Tilt Town Titans featuring George Ellsworth, Taylor Shikes, and Ian Hopp, a great band over at Eddie and Liz Gleason's Carmony's Irish Pub every Sunday from 4 to 6. When we were getting ready before you guys came in, we reconfigured our schedule just for Willow Green and Era so they'd have a little more time to play. But, Sue, why don't you get up a little closer to the microphone so you can tell us who is this combination of fabulous musicians we have today?
Okay, well, we have Jim Austin here, and he's playing an Irish drum. It's called a bodhrán. And Liesl Wilson playing the violin, and I'm Sue Spencer, and I'm on my guitar.
Let's hear some.
All right.
Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat. Please to put a penny in the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, a halfpenny will do. And if you haven't got a halfpenny, God bless you. Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat. Please to put a penny in the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, a halfpenny will do. And if you haven't got a halfpenny, God bless you. Christmas is coming, goose is getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, halfpenny will do. If you haven't got a halfpenny, God bless you. Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat.
goose is getting fat. Please to put a penny in the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, a penny will do. If you haven't got a penny, God bless you. Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat. Please to put a penny in the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, a penny will do. If you haven't got a penny, God bless you. If you haven't got a penny, a penny will do.
If you haven't got a half penny, God bless you.
Wow, that is absolutely beautiful. Everybody should listen to Irish music on a Saturday morning, and I'm sure a lot of people do, but they don't get to hear it from some of the Twin Ports' best Celtic musicians. And so this is such a treat. If you love that music, and if you didn't, you're dead, and you wouldn't be listening, go see Willow Green and Era Sunday tomorrow. Great Christmas time show. Celtic music for winter season, Sunday, December 22nd, which is tomorrow, 2 p.m. at the great Sacred Heart Music Center, which is at 201 West 4th Street, right up the hill from us here in Duluth. Sue, tell us a little bit about Willow Green and Era.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Willow Green is a band that's been together for many years. We started in '84 and toured kind of mostly in the Midwest, did a tour up in Newfoundland, recorded 5 albums. And then we kind of went our separate ways in 2006, got the band back together in 2020, and the pandemic happened. So we had everything together. No, it was St. Patrick's Day 2020. We were having this big comeback for Willow Green. And well, so now we're in the studio recording Willow Green.
Cool.
Yes, and we're going to have our album release concert in the middle of March, one in Duluth and one in St. Paul.
Well, we are going to have you back for that. Where in St. Paul are you going to play?
At the Celtic Junction.
Oh, cool.
Yes, down in St. Paul's.
Well, you know, Sue, from a guy that's been in the business for a few years, there's really no money until the comeback tours and the reunions.
It's fun.
Right, Chris?
We do it
right,
for the
right.
love.
Chris is a musician.
You know, one thing I got to say about Willow Green is I've seen you guys every year for the Christmas stuff that you do ever since you came back. And watching them and all the fun that you guys have on stage, you guys are one of those bands that you have to go see, not just listen to. I mean, you can sit there and close your eyes and love the music and everything, but watching you guys have fun and perform, that's part of the show, I think.
Thank you.
So what about, talk to me about Era, the great duo that's on your right, if you are following along at home, psychically, so you can see the studio. Go ahead.
So Era is a band that we started in 2015. We had a couple of other friends of ours, and we all just decided that we needed to play some music during the holiday season because we hadn't really been doing that recently at that point. And so we decided to put a Celtic show together. And since Willow Green wasn't together at that point, so it made sense. And so we started out as just like a holiday band for a couple of years, and our name, Era, is actually the Welsh word for snow, which is pronounced Era, but we say Era because it's the United States.
Yeah, because we're dumb Americans. So
but it's pretty close. Era, right? Like
yeah.
Pretty close. So we still keep that name. But then in 2018, our friend Mary McGillivray joined us. She's from Scotland, and we became a bit more Scottish. Now, sort of, we're the go-to Scottish-related band in the area now.
Well, let's. It's so nice that you guys could join me today. One day ahead of your big show at the Sacred Heart. Let's hear what song can we hear next?
Well, this is a traditional song, but we wrote our own verses to it.
That's kind of like the guy I saw last night, Bob Dylan. He did a little bit of that over the years.
Yeah, yes.
And there ain't nothing wrong with it. All right, here's Willow Green and Era. Take it away, folks.
The holidays bring us all closer together, and warm from the weather at Christmas each year. The season surrounds us with friends and relations, and Yule celebrations with joy and with cheer. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. The candles are glowing, our spirits are growing. It's our way of showing peace and goodwill. The children are restless the morning of Christmas to see what St. Nicholas left under the tree. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So thank you for sharing our evening's pleasure. You all are a treasure. This gift is for you. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Now in the Christmas spirit. We've got Willow Green and Era on. They got a big show tomorrow, 2 o'clock at the Sacred Heart Music Center. If you're listening to Stars Over the Prairie, well, if you are listening to Stars Over the Prairie.
While you're listening.
While you're listening, thank you, Chris. You're a longtime radio guy. You know how this is done.
Right.
We have been on the air since February. We're on every Sunday from 10 a.m. to noon. Today,
Saturday. We're on every Saturday.
I just got back from Hibbing, and I ended the night at home.
I know you're still in that Bob Dylan high, aren't you?
Well, I ended the night with my buddy Dan Bussey at Homer's Bar, sitting next to Angel, Hell's Angels from Cleveland, who is wearing his colors, and so I'm not blaming him.
Right.
I had to watch his drink when he went outside because he said I look like an honest guy, and I am. But anyway, so besides this great music we have on this morning, in a little bit we're going to be replaying a great Charlie Parr interview. He plays a little music. And then the 11 o'clock hour, 11 Central Time, there's people stream the show all over the country, Chris.
Awesome.
And we're going to have a great interview with Terry Thal, the author who wrote a great book called My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me, about her marriage to Dave Van Ronk, the mayor of McDougall Street, managing Bob Dylan when he was just 21, and more. Terry's just a delightful, really intelligent human being that I got to know in 2019. I had the honor of playing the 60th anniversary of Gertie's Folk City, where a lot of the folk music really took off in Greenwich Village. I played there in '86, and that whole period, that Greenwich Village period, for me, it's like Oz. I just love it. Do we got time for one more, Chris?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes here.
All right, I gotta ask this multi-instrumentalist down here. That guy I know has a story. Where the hell are you from, dude?
I ended up in Duluth. From my dad was in the Air Force, so he was stationed at the base here. This back in the 70s. So I ended up in Duluth, and I've been here after a brief time in the Rockies for a few years. But then for pretty much since about 82, I've been here. And
So
been
you're
playing music with Sue since like the high school days, as far as at parties and stuff like that. But then then we started. Then Willow Green started in '84, '85.
We used to do rock and roll though. We were in an '80s band in the '80s.
Yeah.
You know,
hair metal.
And a cover
It was a
band.
hair metal.
it was fun. It was called Split Rock. We did rock and roll. I had my banjo. I was doing Juice Newton songs. I don't know.
You kind of look like Juice Newton, come to think of it. You know, I'm going to invite you guys on the air. Your show tomorrow at 2 at the Sacred Heart Music Center. I'm doing Paul Metsa, the Tilton Titans, from 4 to 6 at the best Irish pub in the Twin Ports, Carmody's Irish Pub. And when you guys get done with your gig, your guitars, fiddles, and drums are going to be warmed up, you got to come down and play a couple songs at Carmody's Irish Pub. Woo-hoo. All right?
We should have you back then. You said the album release is coming out in March?
Yes, it's coming out in March.
Right at St. Patrick's Day. So actually the day before St. Patrick's Day.
Well, which is St. Urho's Day.
It's St. Urho's Day. We know that. We know that because we have played St. Urho's Day and St. Patrick's Day, and we celebrated both.
Okay, Chris.
That's our 1 year anniversary.
That is our 1 year anniversary. So
St. Urho's Day.
So we'll have Willow Green on for our 1 year anniversary. Let's do that.
That's our personal project 2025.
There we go.
Okay, let's hear one more for you folks. They're deciding what to play. It's tense in the studio.
No, that's good.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Walk on.
All right, so we have this wassail song we're going to do. It's a combination of a couple things.
Oh, I can
Okay.
Here we come a wassailing and among the leaves so green. Here we come a wandering so fairly to be seen. Here we come a wandering so fairly to be seen. Love and joy come to you and to you a wassail too. God bless you and send you a happy new year. God send you a happy new year. We are not daily beggars that beg from door to door, but we're the neighbor's children that you have seen before. We're the neighbor's children that you have seen before. Love and joy come to you and to you a wassail too. God bless you and send you a happy new year. God send you a happy new year.
revved up. Well,
and it's bigger. When you go to the show, it's bigger than that.
Well, they put a pretty big sound here for just the three of them. We'd like to thank them. Sue, name your friends there again.
Yes, Liesl Wilson on the violin, and Jim Austin on the drum and singing, and I'm Sue. And
Sue Spencer.
yes.
Well,
Sue plays a 12-string. I want to point that out because that thing is hard to tune.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, so I was playing that on the Christmas one. We wish you a Merry Christmas. A big, gilded, archback honking.
It's a gorgeous sounding guitar.
50 years old.
Yeah.
I used to back when I was in high school. I would stay up all night listening to Bob Dylan just to change strings on my 12-string. Took me about 6 hours.
Yeah.
You were listening to
Just to
Stars
change the strings.
Yeah.
Tuning takes another 6 hours.
Exactly. I had to listen to 3 or 4 Dylan records. This is Paul Metsa. You listen to Stars Over the Prairie. We like to thank our guests there tomorrow, Celtic Music for Winter Seasons, the Sacred Heart Music Center. We're coming up with a great golden oldie interview with the great Charlie Parr, but we're going to listen to a few of our friends that keep this show on the air. If you're looking for a great hang in downtown Duluth, I highly suggest Carmody's Irish Pub. They're located at 308 East Superior Street, open Tuesday through Sunday. The host and hostess are Eddie and Liz. Eddie is a retired Chicago cop. If he happens to be in the club when you're there, talk to him. He's got more stories than I do. They've also got a great jam session every Tuesday night from 8 to 11 with Bruce Woodman. So if you're a musician, tried and true, that has been out there playing and just want to go try out some new stuff, go down and hang out with Bruce and the crew. Or if you're just up and coming, bring your horn or your stringed instrument or just want to sing, go sit in with Bruce Woodman every Tuesday night at Carmody's Pub, 308 East Superior Street.
I'm Joe, and I had Z LASIK at Weiss Eye Center. The funny thing is I absolutely hated buying a contact solution because I thought it was such a racket having to spend $15 on a bottle of contact solution. And that's just one thing, is just not having to buy that stuff anymore, or glasses or anything like that. For me, it's mainly just I like to hunt and fish and everything, and not having to bring that stuff along, especially in the winter when I go ice fishing and stuff. It gets a pain when I get to the end of the day taking my contacts out, and then if a rattle reel goes off in the middle of the night, I'm fumbling for my glasses to go and try and catch a fish.
Weiss Eye Center is the only clinic to offer blade-free Z LASIK in the Northland. To find out more and to arrange your free consultation, call 218-625-1917 today or visit weisseyecenter.com for more information. Weiss Eye Center. See the best.
Every day deserves a superior beer. Earth Rider Brewery's decorated brewers hand-select hops that lend citrus notes to the crisp and easy-drinking Superior Pale Ale. Visit Earth Rider Brewery's Cedar Lounge Tap Room on the Working Harbor in Superior for their award-winning flagship and seasonal brews on tap and to go. To find out much more about Earth Rider Brewery events, join the mailing list and locate Earth Rider Beer near you at earthrider.beer. Hold fast.
River City Records and Books, voted Best Record Store of 2023 in the Twin Ports by the Duluth Reader, has in stock thousands of new and used vinyl records, from classic rock to punk, grunge, and metal, to hip-hop, rap, and jazz, reggae, and dub. Thousands of books, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, and VHS. Also a large selection of cassettes, comic books, and music magazines. Stop in and see them at 1814 West Superior Street in the friendly Lincoln Park Craft District. Open 9 to 7, 7 days a week.
It's Stars Over the Prairie with 8-time Minnesota Music Award winner Paul Metsa.
Welcome back, folks. I hope you enjoyed that beautiful music by Willow Green and Era. Tomorrow, once again, they're at the Sacred Heart Music Center from 2 p.m. with the great Celtic Music for Winter Seasons.
If you can get tickets to that, it's way worth the show.
Yeah. And they will be on, Willow Green will be on on our 1-year anniversary on February 16th. February 16th,
yeah,
with their new record. Don't forget, we've got a great interview with Terry Thal coming up, going to tell us about the history of Greenwich Village and her connections with Dave Van Ronk, Bob Dylan, and more. And We will also be chatting with Professor Ann Margaret Daniel, who's a good friend of mine. Speaking to her from her home in New York, she is a F. Scott Fitzgerald scholar, also a Bob Dylan scholar, and we're going to talk to her about her impressions of the new Bob Dylan biopic called A Complete Unknown. And after this show, I'm going to buzz over and do an in-store over at River City Records, 1814 West Superior Street. Don't forget Paul Metsa, the Tiltown Titans. Forget the Vikings. They're going to win. Just come on over and see us from 4 to 6 tomorrow at 308 East Superior Street and hang out with Eddie and Liz Gleason and myself and the great staff at Carmony's Irish Pub. I had the pleasure of meeting Charlie Parr. He would come down in around 1997. I had an open stage at Mazlack's Bar in Northeast Minneapolis. He'd drive down a couple times a month and would just to play on the stage. He'd play for 20 or 30 minutes. I'd sneak a little extra money to him for gas. I fell in love with his music. I fell in love with him as a human being. And he is now, he's played Newport Folk Festival. He's got many records out. He's played in Europe and all over the country. And we're going to be doing an interview with him next. Here is the great, the pride of Duluth, Minnesota, Mr. Charlie Parr. We're so excited to have in the studio, just got here, my old friend Charlie Parr. Charlie, how are you, brother? Let's
Paul,
shake.
man, it's good to see you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, man, we are so happy to see you. You know, I couldn't be happier to watch your career from those times. And, boy, I'm trying to think, when was it? When I was running my little artist corner at Mazlack's there in Bucolic, Northeast Minneapolis, Tuesday nights.
Yep.
I had about $150 to spread around between 4 or 5 musicians. Of course, we had burgers and beers, and there'd be this guy that drive down in the middle of the winter from Duluth, and he'd play, and he looked like a 9th grade geography teacher. He had little wire-rimmed glasses and short hair and a white shirt, and a very meek and mild guy, and he had this National steel guitar, and he blew my mind. Occasionally, Charlie, I would dig into my pocket to give a little more gas money. I was so impressed with your music, and so now watching you for, what is it, 30 years, I guess?
Yeah.
And as a folk singer myself, I go, Charlie Parr, who I just read about in Rolling Stone magazine, right? You've got a record out on Smithsonian Folkways.
Yes.
Long Live Mose Ash, right?
Yeah.
From Folkways Records. And you played the Newport Folk Festival. I mean, that's like kind of the triumvirate of folkydom. So I want to congratulate you on all your success, but I know how hard you work.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. And, and I had, like, from you and a lot of other people, I had a ton of support, and, it's because when I got started, I wanted to play so bad. It wasn't an issue to drive 130 miles to play a gig. I didn't even think twice about that.
Right.
I just wanted to play.
Well, and I remember, and we're going to talk about our hero, mentor, friend, Spider John Kerner here in just a little bit, because I know you miss him as much as I do, and we're crushed by his passing as much as I am. But I remember, do you remember we did that Ashland Folk Festival 6-7 years ago with John and you and my harmonica player, Sonny Earl. I'll never forget Kerner. Sunday in Ashland, Wisconsin, all the liquor stores are closed. And occasionally I'd like to have a little taste before I go on for the throat. And I said, John, you don't happen to have a pint or half pint? And he had this, it would be the kind of pint that it was plastic that you would carry around when you're fishing, because if it fell overboard, it would float.
It would float.
And so he gave me a shot, and it was, all I can remember, it was cheap brandy and some sort of like maraschino cherry juice. And I said, John, what is it? He goes, I call that the Lower Manhattan.
Yeah, I know that one.
Let's talk, Charlie. Let's get right into it. When did you see, your new record, which is your 18th record you put out? My goodness gracious, that's like a record every other year you've been playing, called Little Son on Smithsonian Folkways, of course, in honor of the great harmonica player Tony Glover, who held forth with Kerner Glover for years. But let's talk a little bit about Spider John Kerner and where you saw him for the first time, and how much he's meant to you over the years.
Well, I moved up to the Twin Cities from Austin, Minnesota, in the '80s. I dropped out of high school in 1981, and spent another year, I think, bumming around Austin before I just took off. I got a room in the West Bank, right behind the Mixed Blood Theater.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Rent at that time was around $60 a month for the nice room in the house, not the crappy one. That was $30 a month. But anyway, I sprung for the nice one. But I could busk my way to $60 over the course of a month. But I landed on the West Bank, and I had been listening to all those old blues records my dad had for all of my life, but I hadn't, I didn't know about the West Bank. I didn't know about John and Tony and Dave, and I got turned on really fast when I moved there. I had friends like Baby Grant Johnson and Mike Nicolai who said, this is what you'll like,
Yeah.
So right away, Sunday night at the Viking Bar, there's John, and I was there with 6 other people.
Right.
And I, by that time I had gotten a hold of. Well, I think Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Been had just come out. I got a hold of that and started diving in, and it changed my life.
Yeah.
That night changed my life. I saw John.
Wow.
He walks in, puts his guitar case down, plugs his guitar directly into that board that would electrocute you half the time at the Viking.
Oh yeah, sure.
He didn't get electrocuted. He sat down. He played for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Told jokes and played for just a few people that were there. Like
really funny guy. Really
it was
funny
hilarious.
guy.
It was, and the songs were amazing, and the guitar playing was like nothing I'd ever seen done before in my life. And I was completely, I was in awe the whole night. And then my route after that was, every Sunday that John would be there, or wherever John would be, I would find him and go see him play. Thursdays, Dave and Tony were playing at the Times Bar on Nicollet. I'd go see them play. Friday night, Willie Murphy used to do those solo barrel house piano sets.
Ooh, that's my favorite Willie Murphy stuff. I mean, I loved him. I loved his songwriting. I loved all of his records. He was one of the best bass players in the world.
Absolutely.
When he played with Willie and the Bees. But for me, Willie, to distill what sort of his soul brother #1 was at the 400 bar at Cedar Riverside on that piano.
And it was crowded. I would get a drink and find my way to that corner next to the jukebox.
Oh, yeah.
Because I could see the piano really clearly. I could hear everything. No one would really be bothering you, Sometimes Tony would show up, and he would stand behind the bar and play harmonica. I was in heaven. It was just amazing. And then, at that time anyway, through the 80s and the 90s, the West Bank, you could go down to the New Riverside Cafe and see Dakota Dave Hull or Phil Haywood.
Right.
Any number of people. Sean Blackburn.
Yeah.
You were playing around. It was just like I could.
Cats on the Stars. We did 4 years of Tuesdays at the 400 bar, which is right in the corner. And then occasionally it was funny because I think we were making $150. It's good money for 3 guys, free drinks. So we turned it into a $300 gig like in the blink of an eye. Right. But occasionally we would take the tip jar and we'd run it up to Palmer's after we'd had a couple and run it around the bar, and people would put money in, and finally somebody say, "Where's the band?" And we go, "At the 400, see you later."
Now I never thought of that's a good idea. We used to play at the Viking every Tuesday for a while, and we used to have it was a regular occurrence. Someone would, they'd pass the tip jar, they'd bring it back up to the stage, they'd put it down, and then someone else would grab it and just walk out the front door with it.
It's the West Bank, whatever you needed was there to be had.
Right.
So you got to start to listen to John back then. The night at the Viking had changed your life. Years later, I have to say, Charlie, I mean, I remember the first time I saw John Kerner at Palmer's Bar. Now, I had Spider Blues back in about 72 or 73, and that cool picture of him on the cover with the shades, the Ray-Bans, and the cigar. Yeah. And then when I moved down to Minneapolis, 77 or 78, you'd hang out at Palmer's, and there was Dave Ray, there was Bill Hinckley, there was Judy Larson, there was Spider John Kerner. So I walked up to him one day, was at the bar, offered to buy him a beer and a bump, and thinking about the record he did with Willie Murphy, the great Run and Jump and Standing Still, which your new record, Little Son, reminds me a lot of, by the way. And I said, John, of course, like trembling like any any young musician meeting Kerner for the first time, or Ray even, or Glover, which was even a little scarier. But I said, John, are you ever gonna play with a band again? And he goes, he pauses and he says, anybody can play with me. He said, but I can't play with anybody else. And it was at that point, it was like, yes, master, I will go to the mountain now.
Right.
Be back in 6 months and tell you what I learned.
Oh, my God.
So, but what an honor. He gifted you his 12-string guitar.
Yeah, he did. Well, it was about a year and a half ago now, he called me up, and he explained to me that he... You know, the last time I saw John play in public was at Tony's memorial.
Right, me too.
I think that might have been the last time he played.
That was the last time he performed in public.
And afterwards, we're backstage together, and I was, I'm trying to articulate to the man, what him and Tony and Dave,
right,
and all these musicians meant to me, and I can't do it, obviously.
And I have called them for years the Holy Trinity.
Totally. And he said to me, he said, well, I think I'm done. My friends are gone now.
Wow.
And I didn't, at the time I didn't really think too much about it. I tried to say something consoling. It was a hard night. It was an honor for me. It was a very hard night. But that was the last time I saw him play. And then I had seen him after that, and we'd talked for a little while, and he said he felt like his hands had Alzheimer's. His brain knew what to play, but he couldn't get his hands to shape what he wanted.
Right.
And he was he was an idiosyncratic guitar player.
Yeah.
He was a cipher. He was one of one, the way he played. So I figured that if he couldn't get it to sound like he wanted to sound, he was probably just going to stop.
Right.
And then he called me up a year and a half ago, and he said he didn't want these guitars just sitting around. He had 3 guitars. He had a 9-string that he had given away in New England. Walked off the stage. He said he was quitting music forever. Gave it to a guy in New England and moved to Denmark. Right. And then years later, the guy shows up in Boise, Idaho, and gives it back to him.
I've heard that story. It's incredible.
I know. And so we had that one, which I think that one's at the Plow and Stars, hanging on the wall. His Epiphone is currently on display at Palmer's in that beautiful case they made for it. And then the third one was the Gretsch that had been a 6-string and had been converted in Florida to a 12-string.
Yeah.
And that's the one that he gave to me.
It must have just knocked you out.
I was completely flabbergasted.
Yeah. Tell us, before we ask you to play a song, Charlie Parr, just tell us about, if let's say a Martian came down from outer space and they go, Mr. Parr, tell us about American music in the sky, Spider John Kerner. How would you describe him to a complete stranger or an alien or whoever?
Well, it'd be tough without a knowledge of the history of music, because the thing that John taught me the most is, he's a walking embodiment of the folk process.
Yeah.
In everything.
Right.
So he's taking in folk songs and like masticating them and then reproducing them as Spider John songs.
Yeah.
The songs that he covered were so unique, and the way he wrote songs was so unique. There's really almost nothing else like it. But to me, he embodied what Pete Seeger said about folk music, because he was an active participant in the process. Even the guitar, with all the modifications.
Yeah.
Nothing, these songs and guitars are all just like tools to get to the next step. If when no one knows anything about John, that's kind of what I say. This is someone who is so unique. You kind of have to sit down and listen for a little while. You'll hear his influences, but it takes a little longer, because he's completely disassembled, that Louis Armstrong version of St. James Infirmary blues that he does. He's the one that starts that CD you gave me. He disassembled that, and then suddenly it's a Spider John song.
Right. Well, he did it all with so much authority. And God, I was thinking, Charlie, when he passed, like, how many times have I seen Spider John? I go, once a month for 40 years. I remember one of the simple pleasures. You lived on the West Bank. I spent a lot of time on the West Bank. One of the simple pleasures of my life would just be standing on the street watching Kerner walk across the street with his guitar in a case.
Yeah.
I just knew the world was, everything was right in the universe at that point.
Yeah.
Now, what did, God, well, and I just got a call, and I believe we're both honored. We're going to be playing the Spider John Memorial at the Caboose on June 23rd, so we're looking forward to that. I was so honored when MJ, Dave Ray's widow, who's an old friend of mine, called me. I said I couldn't be happier to more honored to be invited.
Same.
But would you like to play us a song?
I can, yeah.
Great. We've got the great Charlie Parr in the studio. His new record out is called Little Sun, 18th record. And then we're going to talk to him about, he told me a great story back at the Ashland Folk Festival, how it's when he's driving from town to town, he likes to stay at truck stops in his van or his car, whatever he's driving, and he occasionally will put his burrito on the engine to heat it up when he's about 45 minutes out of town, depending. Yeah, it depends on the weather, but not only are we going to get Charlie Parr's musical history and songs, we're also going to get some cooking tips from Chef Charlie Parr.
I can do that, definitely. All right. I can feel my energy getting dimmer. This generator, it won't quite light up the road. My engine only fires on 5 cylinders. Straining to pull up a heavy load. I guess it's always been that way. $20, that's what's needed. Oh, I'm making about 7 on a good day. Everybody's gonna have to be patient. I really don't need to come outside anyway. I guess it's always been that way. Oh, my room is situated in the corner. I can see 3 directions from my chair. It's a box king apartment in the city. No one can sneak up on me there. It's always gonna be that way. There ain't no need for you to be lonely. I'm just sitting around here all day. Well, you can stop by when you want. Sit down with your violin and play. That's what's required. Well, I might be up to 10. I'm gonna sit on the stoop and watch the traffic. And I might not ever get up again. I'm gonna sit on the stoop and watch watch the traffic. I might not ever get up again. It's always gonna be that way.
Oh, yeah.
That's Charlie Parr right there.
Boy, was that good, man. That guitar sounded really good. Of course, it's, Charlie's playing it. I just, man, that guy's one of the best folk singers in America, bar none. We've got, speaking of folk singers, we have in the second hour at about 11:15, quarter past the hour, we have Terry Thal, author of My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me, about her time with Dave Van Ronk, who she managed along with a young Bobby Dylan. And right after the news at the top of the hour, we're going to be speaking with Professor Ann Margaret Daniel from her home in New York, who's going to give us the lowdown on the movie A Complete Unknown. Next week, we're going to have the rest of that Charlie Parr interview and a whole hour with the great Al Sparhawk, one of our golden oldies from Stars Over the Prairie. So stay tuned.
And don't forget, give yourself some love for, you're going to be playing Carmody's, too.
Tomorrow from 4 to 6 with Paul Metsa, the Tilt Town Titans. Never a dull moment over there with Eddie and Liz, 308 East Superior Street, Carmody's Irish Pub.
I could see stars over the prairie, stars over the prairie tonight. And I wish I could see stars over the prairie, stars over the prairie tonight. And I wish I could see.
Your home for Bulldog hockey. It's Stars Over the Prairie with 8-time Minnesota Music Award-winning songwriter, musician, author, and historian, Paul Metsa. Check out previous show podcasts at KDAL610.com. Now, here's Paul Metsa.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I left Hibbing, Minnesota this morning, where I stayed with my good friend Dan Busey. We went there, saw a special showing of A Complete Unknown, the new Bob Dylan biopic, which we're going to be speaking with Professor Ann Margaret Daniel with in just a bit. But I was able to swing through my hometown of Virginia, Minnesota, stop by Flamer's Bar to see my buddy Gary Flame. And if you are traveling up north, you want to get a little of that Iron Range vibe, well-priced cocktails, maybe play a pull tab or two, stop at a Flamer's Bar on the main drag, Chestnut Street and 2nd Avenue in Virginia, Minnesota. Before we get to a great interview with author Terry Thal, who wrote a great book called My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me, about her time with Dave Van Ronk, Bob Dylan, and more, and Susie Rodolo, which is really great, who was Bob Dylan's girlfriend. We are going to speak with a woman that knows quite a bit about Bob Dylan. She is calling us from her home in Woodstock, New York. She is a big dog-loving lady, which is one of the reasons why I love her. She's an F. Scott Fitzgerald scholar and a Bob Dylan scholar, and she saw the she saw the movie last week in a special preview for those cool Gotham City folks. Without any further ado, I want to say a very good morning to Professor Ann Margaret Daniel.
Hello, my friend Paul. It's always a pleasure to speak to you and to be on your magnificent show. I'm so envious that you're in Hibbing. I loved Hibbing when I was there in September most recently and had just a fantastic time in town.
Well, and I spent some time with our mutual friend, Mr. Bill Pagel, who's a bit of a Dylan collector. Well, you know you're a Dylan collector when you own both his house in Hibbing and his house in Duluth. And he's putting the house in Hibbing back to where it was when the years that Bob lived there in the 50s. He's got great... You took a tour of the house, didn't you, Ann?
Oh, I lingered going through the house. It was really marvelous to go through with Bill. The kitchen, the dining room, the living room. I mean, first of all, it's a beautiful house. The layout is very I don't know, it feels very, to me it feels kind of 1930s. Maybe that's when it was built. I can't quite remember the date. But the wonderful little alcove that still has an old rotary telephone in it. And then upstairs, the bedroom that both Bob and his little brother shared, kind of around the corner and down the hall from the parents and I guess Dylan's or Zimmerman's at that point grandmother was living with them. She had a large room in the corner. But the boys had a wonderful room looking out back over the back porch and into the yard.
Well, and the thing is, I had, when Greg French, who sold it to Bill Pagel, had it, I house sat for him a few times. I've taken naps in that bedroom, but if you would look outside the window that looks to the west over the garage, you'll see the little drain pipe that supposedly Bob used to sneak his girlfriends in and out of. We could go on about the house all day. We've just got about three or 4 minutes with Professor Ann Margaret Daniel before we have Terry Thal on to tell us about.
Oh, remarkable Terry. Well, Terry will be telling you about the reality of what it was like in Greenwich Village in the very early 1960s with Dylan and with her partner and later husband at the time, the late, great Dave Van Ronk, the mayor of McDougal Street.
And we sure had a great... Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, what I will talk to you about today is the fictitious village that you will see in A Complete Unknown, this new biopic of Dylan that's coming out. And the first thing I'd like to say, I mean, you saw it last night. I was lucky enough to attend the New York City premiere and then the after party at the Chelsea Hotel, where else, and talk to a few of the stars and get their opinions about some things. I then saw a second screening at the Museum of Modern Art the following night that included a talkback with all the cast and with James Mangold, the absolutely brilliant director. And my first impressions, my gut feelings on the movie are that...
And before we get to Terry, we've only got 2 minutes, so give us the thumbnail sketch.
Make it snappy.
Yeah, please.
Here's my bottom line.
And we'll have more time with you in the future, but go ahead.
Wonderful. Another time. Terry is who you want to get to. But my take on the movie is go and enjoy it and have a good time. It is not a documentary. It is a biopic. And the instances in the film and indeed the characterizations of a lot of the people are not directly correspondent to biographical facts. Everybody should expect this in a Dylan project. I mean, it's very similar in some ways to the Rolling Thunder Review, the Scorsese film, which was a mixture of fact and fiction. This is as well. My takeaway things from this are that the young woman playing the Susie Rotolo character, Sylvie Russo, Elle Fanning, is brilliant. I wish that her humor and warmth had been allowed to show more than just her kind of sad demeanor, which was her kind of typecasting in the movie.
Right.
The actor playing Pete Seeger, Edward Norton, deserves a Golden Globe, an Oscar, every award there is. He became Pete Seeger.
I'm going to put $100 on him in Vegas for Best Supporting Actor.
I'll play too. I'll put $200 on him.
Great, let's do that.
His performance, I think, is the best one in the movie, closely followed by Scoot McNairy as Woody Guthrie.
He's phenomenal.
These two, who doesn't have a word to say, but man, incredible performance. And Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie are put forth in the film as Dylan's two leading mentors.
Well, as
he arrives in New York City. And just to finish my point, It's very much a New York City movie. And it is set in and revolves in and around Dylan in New York. His past as Robert Zimmerman in Hibbing is barely alluded to, and that's something that Dylan was suppressing at the time. Characters who were very influential, like Dave Van Ronk and Phil Oakes, who were already major village characters, are very absent in the movie. You have kind of a fleeting cameo of Van Ronk, and that's it.
Well, you know, my thanks, Anne Margaret Daniel. I will just tell you, and we will talk. We will have you on again soon because this movie deserves more discussion. Any movie that starts and ends with a Woody Guthrie song is okay by Paul Metsa.
And it's the same song. So long, it's been good to know ya.
And so long has been good.
I will say that right now to you.
Hey, Ann, you have a great Christmas. We'll talk soon. Thank you, but we got to get to...
Merry Christmas, and please give my best regards to Terry. She's a magnificent person.
And
lots of love, Paul. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And now, here's Terry Thal.
I'm Zach, and I had Z LASIK at Weiss Eye Center. I was sick of wearing glasses. I've had glasses since third grade. Dealing with the nuisance of glasses kind of reached that point of I just need to get LASIK. I was a little nervous, but knowing now what that process all entailed, I wouldn't have been nervous if I knew. Everybody's really nice here. Not a bad thing to say about anybody. Everybody's happy, and everybody here's nice. And I mean, it's day one post-op, and I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Weiss Eye Center is the only clinic to offer blade-free Z LASIK in the Northland. To find out more and to arrange your free consultation, call 218-625-1917 today or visit weisseyecenter.com for more information. Weiss Eye Center. See the best.
If you're looking for a great hang in downtown Duluth, I highly suggest Carmody's Irish Pub. They're located at 308 East Superior Street, open Tuesday through Sunday. The host and hostess are Eddie and Liz. Eddie is a retired Chicago cop. If he happens to be in the club when you're there, talk to him. He's got more stories than I do. They've also got a great jam session every Tuesday night from 8 to 11 with Bruce Woodman. So if you're a musician, tried and true, that has been out there playing and just want to go try out some new stuff, go down and hang out with Bruce and the crew. Or if you're just up and coming, bring your horn or your stringed instrument or just want to sing, go sit in with Bruce Woodman every Tuesday night at Carmody's Pub, 308 East Superior Street.
River City Records and Books, voted best record store of 2023 in the Twin Ports by the Duluth Reader, has in stock thousands of new and used vinyl records from classic rock to punk, grunge, and metal to hip-hop, rap, and jazz, reggae, and dub. Thousands of books, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, and VHS. Also a large selection of cassettes, comic books, and music magazines. Stop in and see them at 1814 West Superior Street in the friendly Lincoln Park Craft District. Open 9 to 7, 7 days a week.
News Talk KDAO. Now back to Stars Over the Prairie with Paul Metsa.
We'd like to thank Anne Margaret Daniel. We didn't have enough time to chat with her, but we're going to have her on again. There's a lot I want to say about A Complete Unknown. I'm planning on seeing it. Not Christmas Day. I'm going to be up with my brother and my great family up at Grey Wolf Lodge up on Pelican Lake, but I will catch it as soon as I get back. After the show today, I'm buzzing over to do an in-store hour set over at River City Records. And here's an interview I did with Terry Thal just a couple of days ago, author of My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me. We have a superb guest on tonight. You probably have been reading, you can't miss it, that the new Bob Dylan biopic, the country on Christmas Day. There's been a few select previews around the country, and it's about Bob Dylan's basically his time in New York and his rise to fame. Well, I'm not going to call Hollywood and get that scoop. I'm going to go right to the source, to Bob Dylan's first manager, Terry Thal, who's got a great book out that I've been reading and thoroughly enjoyed, called My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me, published by McNitter and Grace. And you can get it on Amazon, and I suggest you buy it for yourself and any Bob Dylan, Dave Van Ronk, or Greenwich Village folk music fans you have as friends or family. So with no further ado, speaking to us from somewhere in an undisclosed location in New York. My friend, who I had the pleasure of meeting in 2019, Terry Thal. Terry, how are you today?
Well, it's 11 o'clock in the morning where I am. I'm kind of okay. Thank you.
You grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
I did.
So you're a lifelong New Yorker, and I spent enough time over there over the years to know it's a beautiful place to visit. I don't know if I'd want to live there full time, although I spent about a year and a half in Rego Park, which I very much enjoyed.
Did you? Oh, in Queens.
Oh, yeah. I love Queens.
Really?
I was 63rd and Queens Boulevard.
I visit a friend in Queens a lot these days, and it's all really new to me because I never knew Queens at all. To me, Queens was like a foreign country. And I'm really liking it.
Oh, I absolutely love Queens. It has a lot of Russian immigrants, and Queens Boulevard, I believe, is the biggest boulevard in America. I mean, you really had to pay attention when you were crossing that street because there was 4 or 5 lanes of traffic coming from each way. But
it became a big issue. I've read a lot about it. There were a lot of kids getting hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your time? What was Brooklyn like back in the day when you were growing up?
Brooklyn was so different. I mean, people now, when I talk about growing up, about my first 11 years in Bed-Stuy, people don't believe me when I say that I lived in a neighborhood where the streets were some of them were brownstones. There were those gorgeous brownstones, but a lot of them were just like DeKalb Avenue, just streets with little stores. And they were little, there was a little bakery, a little store that sold women's aprons or, kitchen stuff or dry goods. I lived, on one side of us was a candy store, and on the other side of us was a grove of garages, and then there was a bar next to it, and a beauty parlor up the block. When I talk to friends about it, they literally don't believe me because that neighborhood was burned down in the 60s, and it was replaced by parks, by residential areas and parks. And now across the world, I couldn't afford to live there.
Right.
And then I spent the rest of my childhood growing up until I was 20 when I moved to the village in Flatbush in Midwood. Which was a kind of mixed neighborhood.
What did your mother and father do, Terry?
My parents were immigrants. They came here in 1917. My mother from Russia, from a shtetl in Russia. My father from a place called Stanislav, which had been Poland and then had been part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and now is in, I believe it's Western Ukraine. And Daddy had worked his way up to being the dental mechanic. And then he had a heart attack and was told he had to get out of that business. And he went to work for his brother who had a textile business. And my mother kept house. My mother was an incredibly smart woman. She was the oldest of 6 children. She brought them up. And because my grandmother was an immigrant who never really acclimated very well to this country. And my mother was not allowed to go to an academic high school. She never recognized her commercial diploma as a real diploma. In her last year of life, when she had Parkinson's, I found that diploma and I brought it to her and I showed it to her. And she looked at it and she said, "That's not a real diploma." But she never became a feminist. That wasn't part of her life.
Right. So, what In your great book, My Greenwich Village Dave, Bob, and Me, the author, fellow named Mark Elliott, wrote a great book, which I've read, called Phil Oakes, Death of a Rebel. And we wanted, besides Bob Dylan and other musicians that we're going to talk about, I really want to hear more about Phil Oakes. But Elliott says of your book, Terry Thol's memoir is told from the privileged position of not only having been there for the crowning, but as a woman on the cultural front lines. Her detailed recall brings a fresh perspective on the Greenwich Village folk scene of the 1960s. I've so been enjoying the book. When did you, before we get back to your history in Greenwich Village, let's talk a little bit about when did you decide to write the book?
When the publisher asked me to.
There you go.
That, I had thought for years, people said to me, you should write a book. And I said, who'd read it? I'm not a musician. And then I wrote a chapter and I went to a writing school, and it was a good school. And I circulated a chapter and people said, oh, you're a very good writer. And I am. I knew that. I've written commercial stuff my entire life for working. Papers, press stuff, papers for, white paper stuff for the government. But I'd never written a personal thing. And I circulated this and people said, oh, it's really good. You're a good writer. You have good stories, but I don't feel you emotionally in it. And I said, I can't do that. And I put it away. And then somebody got in touch with me and said, I'm writing a book about Bob Dylan in New York. Will you answer some questions? And I said, okay. And I never answered his questions. And when he got in touch with me, I thought, answer the guy's questions. And then I said, but then what do I put in my own book? And then I said, Terry, you're 80-some odd years old. You haven't written your stupid book. So I answered his questions. He turned them into a chapter in his book. And I had it reviewed by a lawyer, and it was okay. And 2 months later, I got an email from the people at McNitter and Grace, who were his publishers, saying, are you writing a book? And we talked, and I said, okay. And I wrote the book.
Well, that's so much cooler than having to send out a manuscript and have it sent back unopened from a dozen publishers.
Right.
Now, for those people that don't know the name Terry Thal, and if you've done your research on the history of Greenwich Village and the folk scene, which I have, that's kind of my Oz in a way. That's kind of those musicians in that time, although I was a lot younger, really informed who Paul Metsa became. But you were the first manager of Bob Dylan, and not only that, you were probably one of the first people that did a reel-to-reel recording of Bob when he was playing at the Gaslight Cafe on McDougal Street. And is that, so that cements your place in history for sure. But let's talk about, how did Terry get from Brooklyn to Greenwich Village? What prompted that move?
For some reason, when I was in high school, I decided that I became a socialist of sorts. I decided that everybody should have a place to live, and food, and health care, and water, which is disappearing, incidentally, from our society. And when I went to college, and I went to Brooklyn College, so I got on a bus and I went to Brooklyn College. I went looking for a group or groups that would be sympathetic to what my burgeoning political ideology, and it really was burgeoning. I mean, I was young. I was 16 when I hit college. And this was all, I was wrestling with all this. I was thinking about it. And I wound up in a group with, cutting the journey short. I wound up hanging around a socialist organization. And at that time, and I'm talking about the late 50s, I'm talking about 1958, the winter of 1958, the headquarters of all the left-wing organizations were located in the village. When I was in high school, a friend and I, my best friend, a guy named Stewie, and I had gone to the village just to wander around and look. And I had been intrigued by it. I'm not quite sure by what, but I had been intrigued by it. I think I had expected to see something out of the Middle Ages, little funny houses with cobblestones and stuff like that. Instead, I saw people wandering around, looking very comfortable, and a very, very eclectic mix of people, which intrigued me. So here I was in college, and I went to meetings with this socialist organization, and there was a strong relationship between folk music and the socialist movement at that time. We were entranced by the old industrial songs and union songs, many of which were so trifey, nobody would listen to them now. All the fort for we are coming, union may be strong, side by side will something or other onward. But at that time, and I was 16, 17, they were exciting. So that brought me to the village, and the world was very small back then. There were several hundred people in it, and there was a strong overlap between the socialist movement, the folk singers, the artists, people, the science fiction people. People knew one another. They may not have worked together or been sympathetic to each other's groups or way of thought, but everybody knew somebody or five people who were in an adjoining movement. And I met folk singers through the socialist movement. So I kind of backed into it.
Cool. We've got author and shaker and mover Terry Thal on the show for the entire show tonight. We're going to listen to a little Woody Guthrie, where a lot of this stuff started from in terms of the folk music, and then beyond with Terry for the rest of the show. So don't switch that dial. All right, you are back with set 2 on the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa, and my guest and friend, Terry Thal. She's written a great book called My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me, about her time in the village, managing Bob Dylan, being married to Dave Van Ronk, and more. She's just fascinating. During the first set, we were talking about how she got to Greenwich Village. And so before we ask her about taping one of Bob Dylan's first shows at the Gaslight Cafe, how did you meet your future husband, Dave Van Ronk, Terry Thal?
Well, I said that the world was very small and everybody knew one another. Somehow, one night I wound up at a party of science fiction fans. And science fiction fans then put out mimeographed magazines. If anybody here remembers mimeographing, it was an early way of reproducing print on mimeo machines. And it was in one of those huge apartments up on Manhattan's Upper West Side. There are these apartments up there, children, that are bigger than my house.
Wow.
I live in a little house. They are bigger than my house. And each room is probably as big as my house with high ceilings. They're amazing. They're gorgeous. And there was a group of people. It was a place called The Dive, and it was rented collectively by a bunch of people who were science fiction fans and lived there, young people. Dave was visiting. He was not staying there. I didn't know him. I'd never met him. I have no idea why I was there, but I was invited and I was there. And I was sitting talking to some guy named Shell who wanted to drag me into a bedroom. And young and stupid as I was, I knew it wasn't for sex. Right. And he told me he wanted me to smoke marijuana with him.
Yeah.
I was 17, I think so. And to me, I was in college. I was in my second year in college, and to me, marijuana was that wicked stuff that used to grow in the fields outside of my high school that the cops came and burned down every year. And I was freaking out, and this tall, skinny, and yes, he was skinny, guy came up to us and said, Shell, leave her alone. And he chased Shell away. And Dave Van Rock and I spent the rest of the evening talking. I did not know then that he was stoned on grass. And I didn't see him again for months. About 4 months later, I was in the Figaro, which was a coffee house in the village on the corner of McDougal and Bleecker, where everyone hung out. Everyone. I mean, I and my college friends, I was part of then what was called the Bohemian Crowd at Brooklyn College. There were either 5 or 7 of us. And we were there one night, and Dave was at another table. I hadn't seen him since that party. And he came up to me, and I was still living in Brooklyn, and he walked me to the subway. He may have gone home he may have taken me home. I don't remember. It was an hour on the bloody subway. And we were together for another 11 years, and
wow,
1 month, 2 months, something like I tuck in the months and weeks because it's funny.
Terry, when you met him at the science fiction party, did you know he was a folk singer, or did you know he was a folk singer when you met him again at Cafe Figaro?
I guess I knew he was a folk singer, but you got to remember that wasn't a big deal then. Right. There was he wasn't working. He wasn't a professional folk singer. At that time, there was absolutely no way for a young folk singer to make even a penny in New York. You could not earn a living. Some of the older people, like Cynthia Gooding, Theo Bickel, did concerts at night after theaters, small theaters, like the Theatre de Lys and Christopher Street closed. But for a young folk singer, nothing. People played in the village on Sunday afternoons, and that was it. Wow. So, I knew he was a folk singer. I also knew he couldn't earn a living. It was just not possible.
Well, there is a great book that we've got to mention, that kind of the movie A Complete Unknown, which is the Dylan biopic with Timothy Chalamet, is loosely based on, and that's Elijah Wald's The Mayor of McDougal Street, which is about your ex-husband, Dave Van Ronk. So he was really one of kind of the cornerstones, wasn't he, of the folk music movement when it started to progress. And how did it start to progress where it became a thing?
Well, what happened was in 1959, Dave and I incidentally started living together the summer of 1959. I graduated from Brooklyn College. It was my 20th birthday. We moved in together actually in Chelsea, which is just a little bit north of the village. And a few years later, we moved into an apartment in the village where we stayed forever. And at some point, a man named John Mitchell who had owned the Figaro, opened a coffee house and brought in poets, beat poets, to read in the coffee house. And it was what you call a basket house, which meant the poet would read, the poet or a waitress, never a waiter, always a pretty waitress, would pass a basket, the audience would put money in the basket, and that's how the poet got paid. There's a limit to how many times people will put their hands in their pockets and pay a performer.
Right.
So they'll do it for one performer. They won't do it for more than one performer.
Well, their other hand is they're snapping their fingers, right?
Yeah, well, that was to keep from making noise for the tenants upstairs.
Right. Oh, right, exactly.
Literally, I mean, that's what that was all about. So after a while, so you had to drive out the audience in between poets. I mean, the audience would put their hands in their pockets for Ted Jones, but then what do you do when John Brent comes in? The audience isn't going to shell out for him again. They've already paid. So John Mitchell got the bright idea of hiring folk singers to come in, and he figured the folk singers would be so awful, the audience would leave.
Fantastic.
Get a new audience for the next poet. Well, you know the rest of the story. The audiences stayed. They loved the folk singers, and after a while, the poets had no place to work, and the folk singers were working in the coffee houses. And that was really how it started. And without going into the genesis of the various coffee houses that started on McDougal Street, and, you know, everybody, there was a place called the Commons, there was another place called the Black Pussycat, but Dave and I were living together then. And he and a whole bunch of very, very talented young folk singers suddenly had a place to work, and most of them focused in the Gaslight, which was owned by this madman named John Mitchell, until John sold it, and eventually it was owned by somebody named John Hood and managed by Clarence Hood and Sam Hood.
Yes,
and that's where Bob wound up playing a lot. The story.
Let me ask you, Terry. First of all, I was going to say, I one of the pleasures of my life was getting to be friends with Spider John Kerner, and he had some great stories about Clarence Hood and the Gaslight that we'll share at another time, because we've got to have you. You've got Terry Thal, who wrote My Greenwich Village, Dave Bob and me. You've got more than one show with Paul Metsa in you, I know. But so tell us about, because we're kind of speaking about the opening this weekend of A Complete Unknown, the new Dylan biopic. When did you first bump into Bob Dylan?
I bumped into him the night after he first performed in the Village. The Gaslight, incidentally, started paying salaries after a while. And then there were a lot of other clubs that opened, and they were basket houses. A performer would play, this was a folk singer, not a poet, would play and pass a basket. And people would contribute. Bob hit New York in the winter of '61. And one night Dave came home and he said, I heard this strange guy tonight. You got to go hear him. I think kid's a genius. So the next night, and I was in graduate school at that time, incidentally. The next night I trotted down to the Café Bois, and I heard this kid, and he was very strange. He was cute. He didn't walk straight. He didn't play very well. He didn't sing very well. He had this funny cap that he kept sort of waving around and doffing. But there was something about him that was, I hate the word unique, but there was something about him that was unique. And I went home and I said, you're right. And I don't remember exactly how we all became friends, but we all became very good friends. And I think by then I was managing Dave. David asked me, I had been in graduate school, or I still was in graduate school, I don't remember. And David had asked me to be his manager, and I was managing Dave. And Bob and us became friends. And when he met Susie, we all became friends. And Susie and I became very good friends. And
Terry mentioned who Susie is to the...
Susie Rodolo was a very young woman. She was 16, I think, when Bob met her, who he met months after he hit New York. He met her at a concert that he did, where he performed, and that I had booked him into. And they fell in love. Susie came from a family, her mother had been a communist. I can't remember what her father was, but her parents had separated. And her oldest sister, Carla, worked for theater producers and directors. And Susie herself worked in the arts. She worked for, and she was involved in the civil rights movement, and she had something of a foot in the left-wing movement herself, something of a background in that. And we became, as I said, we became very good friends, and she and Bob were together for several years.
Well, everything I've read and heard, she really had a influence on Bob politically.
Yep, we all did. Yeah, Susie did. Dave and I did. David and I lectured him interminably. I think we bored the shit out of him. Excuse me, excuse my French. But we did that to everyone. Dave and I ran, I call it a hotel. People came up to the apartment every night, and it was a mixture of socialists and folk singers. And no, they didn't sit around and pick music and sing Kumbaya. We talked. We played records. Occasionally they played, but mostly we talked. And Dave and I lectured, as I said, interminably about our politics, which everybody tolerated and was bored stiff with. Susie had a background in it, and Susie did not have the kind of... Susie didn't have quite the political touchstone that Dave and I did. At that time, Dave and I considered ourselves Marxists, and we were very firm about our beliefs. Susie was a bit looser about her, but she did have a conception of what we called the class struggle, which I will not bother anybody with now. I don't do that anymore. But, that's where it was. And I became Bob's manager of sorts, and that lasted about 6 months.
And we're going to listen to a little young Bobby Dylan and be back for one more set with Terry Thal. So don't touch that dial. And Terry, I am so enjoying our conversation.
Thank you. Me too.
You're back with the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. We just heard a little bit of Bob Dylan singing the old folk and blues song, House of the Rising Sun. Our guest for the whole show tonight, we're so delighted, is Terry Thal, who is married to Dave Van Rock, managed Dave and Bob Dylan and others. But, of course, the story goes, Terry, that was actually Dave's arrangement of House of the Rising Sun that he was hoping to record, and Bob scooped it out from him and recorded it before Dave did. Do I have my facts straight on that story?
You do. That's perfect. David was rather pleased with his arrangement of that, and one day Bob came to him and said, I'm going in the studio and doing my first album, and I'd like to record that. And Dave said, gee, Bob, let me back up a sec. In those days, we didn't use the word cover. There weren't that many songs around. People weren't writing yet.
Right.
We're barely writing. And everybody was kind of doing pretty much the same material. Pretty much. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't that you were stealing something from somebody, because you were doing somebody else's thing, but you were kind of making it yours. David had taken this old song and he had done a very distinctive, unique arrangement of it, and he was very pleased with it. So Bob came to him and said, Dave, I want to do your arrangement. And Dave said, Bob, I'd rather you didn't, because I'm really rather pleased with that. I'm going to go into the studio sometime in the next whatever, and I'd like to be the first person to record it, so please don't. And Bob looked at him kind of funny and said, well, I recorded it either this morning or yesterday. And Dave had a tantrum, justifiably, and he screamed and yelled, and he stopped talking to Bob. And that lasted a couple of months. And
wow.
Susie, I understood it. It bothered Susie and me because, Bob and I were still friends, although I was pissed with Bob for doing it. And we finally negotiated a rapprochement. But yeah, Bob wanted it. He did it.
When I look at Dave Van Ronk and read the Mayor of McDougall Street, the great book by Elijah Wald, and I have friends that are friends of Dave's. And, he looks like big burly guy, might have had a temper at certain times.
Not a big one. No.
Oh, really?
No, actually, no. He didn't. He very, very seldom got angry.
Well, now let's go back to what we mentioned at the beginning of the conversation. So Bob is playing at the Gaslight, which I was at Greenwich Village when the Kettle of Fish was still on McDougall. And so I know where the Gaslight was. It was kind of underground. And I went there, I think it's kind of a really shishi cocktail joint now with like $100 martinis. Although I bought one when I was there a few years ago.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's called like Club 44, something like that.
I forget, and I walked past it like a couple weeks ago. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I didn't even look at it. I don't even look at it.
Well, it's still you get the vibe going down those stairs to that kind of dark, damp, and I don't want to say dirty, just great vibe.
It was dirty. Come on, you can say dirty. It was filthy.
So
okay. I loved it. It was my home, but it was filthy.
So when did you decide to lug a real tape recorder down to record the young Bobby Dylan at the Gaslight?
Well, I needed it. I needed something. I was trying to book him, and I was trying to book him out of town. There were a few out-of-town places that would hire folk singers at that time, and I needed something to play for them. This was before CDs, so I had to do something, and I had gotten, as a gift, I had gotten Dave an Ampex full track. I forget, it was a nice Ampex.
Right.
And so we took the Ampex down, and I set up. I can't remember whether Bob was working there for a weekend or I just set up an evening for him to play, and recorded a short set, and the set was like 5 songs. It included an interminable version of Pretty Peggy-O, and it included, he was a friend of mine, it included Dave joining Bob on the chorus of Car Car, and I recorded that, and I took it to the Dick Charles studio, which doesn't exist anymore, to make a little CD, because these were big tapes. I mean, these were like, what was it, 9-inch, 12-inch? I forget. Oh, I have it upstairs. I still have the tape. And eventually, years later, they made bootlegs of it, which Bob's manager stopped from being played. But a couple of years ago, I realized I don't have a lot of stuff from back then. I didn't keep stuff. I lived in a 3-room Greenwich Village apartment. I didn't have room for stuff. I wasn't that kind of person who kept stuff. It never occurred to me that anything would be worth anything. I don't have Bob's corduroy cap, which he gave to me. It went somewhere. But I have the tape. And the sound on it is gorgeous.
Wow.
I took it to Steve Adabo, who is a brilliant engineer.
Right.
Who's worked with Bob's stuff, and the sound is just gorgeous. And it will be auctioned off sometime in the next couple of months.
Wow.
I finally decided, okay, I can live with that. I mean, it's just sitting there.
Well, there's going to be some rich, lucky Dylan fan if they get their hands on that. Terry, these are such incredible stories. I sure appreciate you taking time to speak with us.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh, no. We still got a few more minutes. Tell us about Hold Up Your Book. There's such a beautiful picture. Your book, My Greenwich Village, Dave, Bob, and Me. And you are such a smoking hot
book.
And that you are
24.
You still are smoking hot.
Thank you, love.
Smoking hot 20-some-year-old with a young Bob and a young Dave. That almost looks like the jacket Bob was wearing on the cover of Free Will and Bob Dylan.
It could have been.
Yeah.
It could have been. I don't remember.
Who took that photo?
The photo is sort of a funny story. Jim Marshall, who became a very, very famous rock photographer. This was early in his rock career. And Jim did a photo shoot of Bob, and the four of us, Bob and Susie and Dave and I, used to occasionally go out for breakfast and late breakfast. And we did that day, and we walked around the village, and Jim took photographs. And that, I mean, it's sort of interesting because years, and I don't even have a copy of that photo, years, Susie had one, years and years later, I discovered that walk had become a famous Dylan walk, and people have documented where we were in every moment of the little photo sheets.
Wow.
I didn't remember, but this is one of the pictures from it. Susie had been in there next to me, and unfortunately the designer of the jacket said there were too many people in the picture. It would have been too wide, and they had to crop something out, so they cropped out Susie. I was not happy about that.
Wow. Terry, because I love, when I travel, going to historic sites. What was, when you and Dave lived for years in Greenwich Village, what was your address?
And it was 190 Waverly Place. We lived in apartment 2. We started out, somebody asked me this recently, I think, I'm not positive, but I think I know we started out on the 3rd floor, and then we moved to the 2nd because the apartment was a little bigger. It had a walk-in foyer that you could eat in. So I think we started out in 3F and wound up in 2A.
Cool.
But I would not swear to it.
See, we've only got about a minute left with Terry Thal. Terry. We've got a great show to end out the year. 2 great golden oldie interviews with 2 of the finest musicians from the Twin Ports area who are known all over the world, Charlie Parr and Al Sparhawk. Thanks for listening to Stars Over the Prairie. Follow me at paulmetsa.com. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy. Merry Christmas on Stars Over the Prairie on KDAL 610 AM, 103.9 FM.
Stars over the prairie.